Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Cinema Savvy, and welcome to another Cinema Savvy review, our second within recent times. There
Of
aren't
the
many
year.
films. I was going to say there aren't many films that are actually being published or put out at the moment because of the current situation. But it's always good when we can get on and talk about a film that has come out. So far, we've talked about the Five Bloods, which me and George discussed. Was it last week or the week before, possibly?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
This week, we're moving on to Eurovision Song Contest, The Story of Fire Saga, which is a very, very long-winded title.
I don't know whether just couldn't have called it Eurovision.
I think
Maybe.
that was the original. The original idea was to call it Eurovision, and when I actually go into talking about this film, it's going to be kind of talking about what this film could have been instead of what it actually ended up as. I'm not gonna lead you guys on here. This film was shit. This film was
straight
awful.
into it.
This film was goddamn terrible, and I'm happy that I watched it purely out of the fact that this year it's going to be very difficult coming up with a top 5 worst and top 5 best, and this happily will fill one of the worst slots. So I would recommend it for both you and George to watch. If you need one of those.
That's a hell of a recommendation right there. You just opened with "this movie was shit." By the way, guys, go and watch it if you want to watch the worst movie of the year.
It might not be the worst movie of the year, but it's the worst movie of the year I've seen so far. There's a lot of potential there. It's not as bad as films from past years. I'd say like Hellboy, what was last year as well, Dark Phoenix, which I absolutely detested with all my might. This film is a different kind of hatred, I guess. I don't absolutely outright hate the film. I just think it's shit. It's awful. It's terrible.
That's quote of the year right there. That should be on a t-shirt. I don't think it's awful, but I do think it's shit.
It's a weird film. So this film started off as I think Will Ferrell's wife is Swedish and introduced him to the song contest and got him to watch it one year, and he fell in love with it. He really enjoyed it. So he's always been kind of a fan of the actual event. And I know that it isn't really known to Americans or isn't exactly the most popular thing with Americans, which is why they obviously had a film made about the contest itself. But he originally wanted to make like a parody-styled film. So it was going to be of this kind of small little nation that somehow gets their little band into Eurovision Song Contest. It was going to be an absolute parody of the event.
Which is a good premise. On paper, that's a fine premise.
Making it completely over the top, making it very Eurovision, shall we say, which I think would be endearing to the actual event, because the event, if you haven't seen it or heard of it before, it is over the top Europop judged by politicians is the best way of putting it. And it's always fun watching all of the people competing in it. And we get a lot of fun of watching all the different acts, all the different staging and set piecing and everything like that going forward. I think the most popular performance ever would probably be ABBA Waterloo.
Yeah.
And they play that out quite a lot in the film, a lot of homage to ABBA and Waterloo in the film itself. The problem is with this film is it was meant to be a parody. It was originally meant to be a parody. And then I believe Eurovision got involved, and they said, hey, you can come and film in Tel Aviv, which is where the contest took place last year, and you can go backstage and you can meet people and you can get inspiration for it. And the incentive for that immediately became, we want you to make less of a parody and more of a kind of, I don't really know how to put this without...
Like an advert or something? Like a...
I was going to say more of, can you please suck Eurovision's dick as hard as possible, because that is what the film is. And there's no easy way of putting it in that sense, because you could say, oh, they're just kind of pandering to Eurovision, making it, oh, it's going to be a Eurovision film, oh, it's advertising event. No. Would
you say it's kind of a Bohemian Rhapsody situation where it's like, we want to tell this really adult, mature, dark story of Freddie Mercury, and then Queen get involved and go, no, just make it an advert for the band and make it light and fanciful and everything like that. Is that kind of
here's the thing? It was always going to be a parody. There's always going to be a bit of tongue in cheek and everything like that, and it was always planned to be a comedy film based around the event. The problem is the comedy comes from the characters, not from the event itself, and it should come from the event itself. I mean, seriously, if you watched, I haven't personally, but I've seen some of the performers. if you need to go and watch something which perfectly describes Eurovision, please go and watch. I think it's called Uno, Russia's entry this year. And I'm going to get Chris to watch afterwards as well, after the stream's done. I'm going to get him to watch 2 entries. Iceland's actual entry, which the film was meant to be based off these two, Will Ferrell, Rachel McAdams, being Iceland's entry. Iceland's actual entry probably would have won. Russia's entry was probably the favorite, though, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So I think Iceland probably would have won it on the night, but Russia's was the most popular at the time that it came out.
I should say right off the bat, I love Eurovision Song Contest.
Eurovision's great, seriously.
I didn't watch it this year. I know they did that whole event thing where I don't know if it was the acts that would have performed. I don't really know what was happening, or if it was just sort of like a best of list. I didn't watch it this year, but it was like a tradition with like me and my friend. Like every year he'd come over, we'd grab pizza, and we'd riff on the majestic wonder that is Eurovision Song Contest, and it's hilarious. And I will say that the last few years, the craziness seems to have toned down a bit now, and it's just kind of default Europop. Back in the day, in like the mid 2000s, when I was watching it, it was hilarious. It was brilliant. And obviously in the UK, I know you've got different presenters all across the world, but in typical British fashion, we have the very sarcastic. Yeah, I mean, you had the great Terry Wogan, and then Graham Norton, who's doing a fine job continuing.
They actually get Graham Norton in the film.
Oh, do they? Oh, okay.
Yeah. He does the blanket commentary for the event, which is quite interesting.
I want the title for a start: Eurovision Song Contest: the story of Fire Saga. Is this like Avatar: The Last Airbender or something? I read that title. I was like, does that mean we're going to get Water Saga and Earth Saga? Like, what's going on with this thing?
I think it depends on how many people actually stream this film, because obviously people are in lockdown. They're going to very easily go, oh, let's watch the comedy about Eurovision, and then find out it's an awful film. But it's probably going to get a lot of people watching it, and I feel like Eurovision would happily, should we say, fund another film if they wanted to. I mean, this film, I just want to kind of lay out what the actual story is. So this band from Iceland called Fire Saga, who is these 2 main characters. I can't remember their names. I can't be asked to remember their names. Was it Sigrid? It was one. And Lars, Sigrid and Lars. And basically, they grew up watching ABBA on Eurovision and everything like that. Their dad's very disapproving of it. Their dad, obviously played by Pierce Brosnan, of all people, who puts on a genuinely god-awful Icelandic kind of Nordic accent. It is painful to watch all of the accents in this film. And they kind of put themselves forward to being a Eurovision candidate. They become the 13th candidate from Iceland as like the last candidate. And then there's a subplot where like all the people like die in a horrific accident except for the people from Fire Saga, and therefore it suddenly becomes, oh look, they're the only contestants we have left, so they have to enter into the competition. And that's kind of the angle they're going from. So they're not the best act from their nation, they're in fact the worst act they could have possibly picked from their nation, and suddenly they're now in Eurovision. But then they turn it into is it a love story? Is it a story about, oh, how your dreams can become true and stuff like that? And this film is meant to be a comedy. There is very little comedy in this film. I don't think there was a single moment in this film where I actually laughed out loud. It's all kind of like really, really the weakest kind of puddle of Will Ferrell's comedy you could possibly imagine. I know he hasn't been the best over recent years, but still, this is pretty low as far as the comedy is concerned. It's not even like he goes to toilet humor or anything like that, which you could very easily do in a film like this. It's very kind of bland humor, and I just don't really get it, if that makes sense.
For me, Will Ferrell's very hit and miss. I wouldn't say I'm a massive fan of his, but there are some things that do make me laugh and everything like that. But I'm looking at the director of this thing now. I haven't actually seen any of the director's previous work.
He did Wedding Crashers, right?
Wedding Crashers, Shanghai Nights, which I think I may have watched years ago. Fred Claus, R.I.P.D., which I know was really bad, apparently.
Yeah.
So it looks like he was an executive producer on King Arthur, Legend of the Sword as well.
I saw that.
But it seems like he's very much sort of in that network of comedy. For like his history is comedy.
Yeah.
I don't know if necessarily those comedy films are good. I haven't watched them, and I know that comedy is subjective, but it's kind of depressing because I think if you had the keys to the kingdom of Eurovision, the possibilities are literally endless with what you could do with that property. And in my fantasy movie pitch, this is, if someone said, like, pitch me a movie, this is the one that I always went to. And I'm very, very disappointed now that a Eurovision Song Contest movie out there exists. It's the story of Fire Saga, and it's really bad. I always want, because the votes are very political, and I imagine the voting room is some kind of circular table or semicircular table.
It's like the war room in Doctor Strangelove.
I'm very glad. So I brought that up. Yes. So my movie was going to be a biting political satire, like Doctor Strangelove, through Eurovision. The fates of the world is turned on Eurovision once every year. And I think that would be a very... And now this movie exists, and it's like, thank you, David Dobkin and co, for ruining my great idea, which would never have happened anyway. But I like to think in some parallel universe it probably would have at some point.
So this film, there is one part where I think it was the moment where I understood, oh, okay, I need to have a look at this now to see if they actually put any funding in to this film. And I can't really find anything that says they put funding into the film, but they flew them out to Tel Aviv to watch the song contest. The film is very pandering towards Eurovision itself, and the title isn't Eurovision, the story of Fire Saga, it's Eurovision Song Contest, which is the official title, which makes me think that. Suddenly, in the middle of the film, they've gone over to... the contest is meant to take place in Scotland in this kind of fictional universe. And they go into kind of the artist's room and everything like that. And then suddenly people go, oh my God, it's a song-along. And I'm just thinking, please tell me they're not going to do an awful montage of singing. And suddenly, out of nowhere, everyone runs into this room and goes, oh, song-along, song-along. And the main character going, oh, I wonder what a song-along is and stuff like that. And suddenly they break out into, I think it's 5 or 6 different songs, which is like a montage mashup. Do you think they're all Eurovision songs? Because they weren't.
No, well, I was going to say, is this a musical throughout? Is there a lot of music going on with Will Ferrell and like? Because I know that he's been in the likes of Producers, for example, where he played Franz Liebkind and has done comedy films, comedy musicals before. Does this have like a whole soundtrack with their music, or is it?
It kind of does. To be fair to them, he sings his own parts. It isn't the best, but he sings his own parts. Rachel McAdams actually needed someone to sing for her. She got Molly Sandon, who was a Swedish singer from the junior contest. But this song along, they go into "Believe" by Cher.
Oh, nice.
Ray of Light by Madonna.
Okay.
Waterloo and Ne Partes Pan Sans Moi, which are the only 2 songs from a Eurovision song, and I Got a Feeling by the Black Eyed Peas in this mashed up montage, and it is just one of the most painful sequences. And you know for a fact, because they were originally planning on releasing this film with the actual song contest, you know for a fact they were going to play this montage as like the opening to the show, because they had so many past winners or past contestants. So I don't know if people at home would recognize these names or anything like that, but I'm going to reel them off anyway. All the people who are in just this scene. They had John Ludvig, who was a Swedish representative from last year, Anna Odubescu, a Moldovan representative from last year, Bilal Hassini, a French representative from last year, Loreen, who was the winner from the 2012 contest, Jesse Matador, who was a French representative from 2010, Alexander Rybak, who won in 2009, Jamala, who was in 2016 from the Ukraine, Estonian representative called Elena from 2018, Conchita Wurst, probably one of the more famous winners from recent years, from Austria in 2014, Netta, another famous winner from Israel, with her Toy song, which I personally didn't like, but she appeared in this as well. You've got Salvador Sobral as well in there, who won from Portugal a few years ago with like a weird piano piece type thing. He appears in the film as well. But this entire sequence is just like Eurovision, Eurovision. This is Eurovision, Eurovision. Watch our show, Eurovision, Eurovision. And from something that could have been a parody and was originally intended to be a parody, to have turned out into, oh, look at our wonderful contest. Oh, look at us. It's painful.
It became it was studio meddling, or it was the owner of the rights stepping in. And
even with the comedy, it makes me think whether Eurovision decided to have a crack at the script as well. Because it seems like the kind of jokes they pull off on the night with the presenters.
Oh no! Oh god!
Heavily.
That's always the most painful part of the show for me, and a lot gets lost in translation and the way that it's said. Yeah. And oh god, I will not be watching this movie then. Whether or not I need to fill 5 movies for worst of, I will find 5 other movies, not including this one. The thing is though, so. Was the original idea to have a comedy set at the Eurovision? I don't specifically know why it needed to be Eurovision by name. Like, couldn't you have just come up with like a completely different name?
Just call it Song Contest or call it Fire Saga and get them to enter into a different competition.
Call it Fire Saga and say like once every year all the countries of Europe join in with like Europop songs at this thing called Fire Saga. It doesn't need to be called Eurovision, and if you're not attaching that name to it, I guess that would give you more creative licensing to be. Imagine like all the weird, colourful and wonderful characters you could have had and parody songs in this, like making fun of Eurovision. You know, but don't attach the Eurovision name to it. Everyone watching it knows exactly what it is, but you don't have that name, you don't have that branding and all the repercussions that you're going to have by essentially making a movie for that company. And that I can understand. I don't like when things do this, but if you're plastering that name on there and you're giving it a bad name, I get like the whole PR and everything of a company like that, of a show like that, not wanting that kind of involvement with it. So just make something different. I don't know. Maybe that's just me.
One of the other things from the film is they have 4 American characters who happen to be in Scotland backpacking at the time.
Of course they do.
And the running joke of the film is, oh, stupid Americans who come to Europe and are horrible and disgusting. This coming from Will Ferrell, a American actor. And the whole kind of purpose of the joke is to lead them on to the fact that they would eventually go to Iceland after the contest was over and actually enjoy the contest and kind of feel included into the contest. And we're Americans, we saw the Eurovision Song Contest and now we love it. And as kind of like a side quest type thing. And it was just so
that to me sounds like a studio note. That to me, whether that's from Eurovision themselves, that sounds like we want to appeal to a wider demographic. This is going to come out alongside. You've got hit US movie that's going to be was this originally meant to be playing in theaters? Was it going to be released in theaters?
Going to be released in theaters. Yeah. I believe Netflix. I think Netflix were going to have a run with it, but I think it was also going to have a limited release.
Yeah, but that to me sounds like we want to appeal to a wider demographic. Alongside, we've got this US property, essentially this movie that's going to be playing in theaters across the US and obviously internationally, and then that will draft in more views and more notice to the Eurovision. That sounds like that to me.
Yeah, but it was just as far as the soundtrack's concerned, there are a few songs which the band plays, shall we say. Probably the best one is Volcano Man, which was the trailer. It's the only song which they actually sing that sounds like a Eurovision song, if that makes sense. Mm-hmm. It's very kind of cheesy, kind of almost dipping into the 80s, kind of Europop and stuff like that. And then all of the other songs were very kind of modern-y Eurovision songs, if that made sense, which was a bit weird, seeing as they didn't pick a single serious kind of... all the songs were serious, whereas Volcano Man was very kind of, oh, look, it's Eurovision, it's the parody. I'm wondering whether that was the only thing that kind of stayed in from the original kind of idea, having the song Volcano Man. But who knows? One final note on this film. This film preaches so hard about cultural diversity. It's something that they put in there in the film. There's a character who's Russian, played by Dan Stevens from Downton Abbey. And he's meant to be like this kind of, amazing Russian singer, probably going to win the contest and everything like that. But it's very subtly, but also not so subtly hinted that he might be homosexual, or at least not completely straight. and they kind of make a point of saying, "Oh, it's the Russian singer, it's Eurovision, you can be who you want to be," and stuff like that, and go with that kind of trail of things. Which I guess is because I'll be honest here, Eurovision is a massive hit amongst the LGBTQ plus community. It's huge. It's phenomenally big, and I just feel like for this, they've gone in with this angle of, oh, we want to be completely open, we want to be culturally kind of open, and also kind of socially open to any kind of issue in the film. It doesn't pull it off even slightly. It kind of almost hints that he goes back to Russia at the end of the film anyway and wins the contest, and he's a winner, and therefore that's good enough as like a little kind of side point. As far as the cultural diversity, like none of the actors are actually playing characters from their actual nation, and they actually point out at the end. It says, oh, when it does the credits, it has the name and then it has the nationality flag next to them. Note that the two main characters in this film are American and Canadian. Then note that like other people who are playing characters, for example, the Icelandic characters, only one of them's actually Icelandic. Like Piers Brosnan is, believe it or not Icelandic. Like all of the other characters in the film, like Dan Stevens, English, playing a Russian character. You have the Greek character played by a Greek actress, fair enough. You then got Demi Lovato playing an Icelandic character. You've got, I'm just trying to see who else we've got there. We've got a German person playing a Icelandic character as well. It's like you could have cast people from that actual nation. You could have been very good here and gone, look, we have all these nations represented. We have all these people who are from their nation, good actors from their nation. But instead, I feel like they've gone with, oh, Will Ferrell's making a parody film. Let's kind of turn that into a film advertising our event. Final closing remarks. This film is god awful. I highly recommend it to anyone.
So it's not even so bad. It's good. There's not any jokes in there that land. Is it just completely beyond saving?
It's 2 hours of a film that painfully panders to itself.
That's and that's a shame because on paper, the premise is actually really quite entertaining, and I'm sure it could. I might watch it just out of curiosity if ever I do get to that state where I'm just like, I need to watch something where I'm going to hate myself.
I'll be honest. I was watching it and I threw up a game basically next to it.
I thought you were going to say, and I threw up.
No, I was watching it and I just thought, I'm so bored. I started browsing through Facebook and Reddit, and then suddenly it was like, okay, let's just throw up a game and like play something whilst actually watching this film. That's kind of the extent of kind of me trying to get through this film and everything like that. So, yeah.
Just out of obligation to Eurovision, I might check it out at some point later in the year, but this is not one that I'm rushing, especially after not hearing your glowing review of it. This isn't one that I wasn't anyway. I haven't watched any trailers for this thing, but I am definitely not going to be breaking my neck to get this watched anytime soon. Yeah.
Okay, guys. Well, thank you ever so much for watching our review of Eurovision Song Contest, the story of Fire Saga. Once again, too long of a title, too long. Please follow us on all the social medias down below, especially because this weekend, this Saturday, in fact, we are going to be going live with our Star Wars Episode 3 Revenge of the Sith drink along. We're revealing the rules for the drinking game that we're going to be taking part in on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram 2 times a day. So please follow us on all of those if you want to know what you need to do to take part in the event. So once again, please join us at 8 o'clock BST on Saturday the 4th for what could, I guess it's one of the biggest events our channel has kind of like.
It is, and I'm glad that we do them once a month now, and I'll probably say this on Saturday as well, because it's not just, artificial hype. It is genuine hype from me.
I've been so hyped.
I've been looking forward to this, not quoting a meme, but since we finished Attack of the Clones, I was like, can we just do the next one next week? But no, we have to make it's anticipation for us. Like, we're very much excited to do it. We've got 10 very abusive rules. I'm kind of scared. I say this every time, and every time it seems like we have escalation in terms of the fear that I fear before going into it. Also, this Thursday, 8:30 p.m. UK time, we'll have I won't say it's our final quiz. We do have a lot of other quizzes lined up, but the official ones that we have lined up will be ending with comic book movies. All the questions are done, locked in, we're ready to go. So that'll be a good one. So if anyone's watching this and does feel like a bit of a quiz, comic book movies, if you think you know your stuff, tune in at 8:30 for that. And again, links at the bottom to find out all information on that.
Cool. Awesome. Well, thank you ever so much, guys, for watching, and we will see you in the next video. Bye.